Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks, and today I'm going to be talking about how I use Obsidian for my personal knowledge management system. Obsidian is a free application that you can go and download off of obsidian.md, and it has a very welcoming and very active community of developers and supporters. It's a very awesome application. I've made a small video about it versus Roam for personal knowledge management, and I'll probably link that up there. And I will be doing a walkthrough video as it currently stands. When I'm filming this, September 21st, literally minutes ago, version 9.0 or 0.9.0 was just released for insiders, which is what I will be showing you today. And some of these features may not be available by the time this video is posted unless you are an insider. So without further ado, let's jump into Obsidian. So my approach to personal knowledge management with Obsidian is a combination of Niklas Luhmann's Zettelkasten and Andy Matuszak's Evergreen notes and atomic notes. I kind of combine these two different paradigms in a way that makes sense and works for me. And I'm going to take you through A to Z, what I do and how I use this application. You can see my graph view here of all of my current collected works, knowledge, and notes, and how it's currently organized. But a little bit of an overview on Zettelkasten and Andy Matuszak's Evergreen notes. There are plenty of other videos that have actually done far more research and can give you a better rundown of exactly what those systems entail, but I'll just give you the gist and kind of like what I'm taking from them. So Zettelkasten and Niklas Luhmann was a German sociologist who used this own system that he created with note cards, and by linking these cards together was able to basically put out enough academic work that it was just incredible, the amount of output that he was able to create through using this system that he developed. And what he would do is he would read literature, academic papers, books, that type of content, and then you read this material and then you form ideas. The ideas are the precipitate of this knowledge acquisition, and you capture these ideas because you're not copy and pasting, you're not paraphrasing, you are generating your own unique ideas, your own unique content. You take those ideas, and then what Niklas did, I believe it was like linking it to the bibliographical information that he saved on a separate note card system, but in essence, these ideas would be linked to other idea cards through a certain indexing system or pattern that he developed. And we don't really have to do this anymore because obviously we have digital tools at our fingertips. But when Niklas Luhmann was doing this, using this system, they didn't have these digital tools available. And what he had was this amazing system of 90,000 index cards, all interlinking together and forming trees and trains of thought. And so what he would do is he would review these cards and lay them out on a desk and read them and see where the ideas were flowing, and he would write. And the whole purpose of a Zettelkasten is to have your thinking aided and, in the most part, done for you. It's a thinking partner. So if you're sitting down to write and you're staring at a blank page, you have to do all of the footwork then and there. Whereas if you relied on a Zettelkasten, it's, okay, I have a jumping off point, I'm going to look at some cards, and I'm going to read and review some of this stuff, and that's an interesting idea. I'm going to write about that. Okay, you start writing a little bit, okay, but now what do I connect this to? Where do I go with this? Well, what was that card linked to? You start following these pathways to different pieces of information and see how these connections are made, and then you generate content, writing, video, whatever it may be. The whole point and purpose of this is that you have an output. And there's a very great book about Zettelkasten and the whole purpose about why it's such a great system for fiction writers, academic researchers, anybody who really writes and wants to have a creative outlet and utilize knowledge work. And it's How to Take Smart Notes by Zonke Ahren. This is an amazing book. It's a quick read. It's about 140 pages. Absolutely worth your time. Do check this out. I'll put a link in the pinned comment. But this is an amazing book. This details how Niklas Luhmann used his system and why using a Zettelkasten is so useful and helpful to your own process. And one of the key points that I took away from this was when you're writing a research paper, for instance, you start off with, I want to write about that. Now let me go and look for the sources around that. If you have a prompt and you have to write about something, that's the way it is. But if you're going to do something in like a field like research maybe, you don't want to find only supporting arguments and basically reinforce confirmation bias. You want to look at the whole view. But human nature dictates that we are already constantly trying to reinforce our own echo chamber, and we only want to look at things that agree with our opinions and our own basic premise. So where Zettelkasten kind of turns this on its head is that you start first with reading broadly. Read differing opinions, read all over the place, generate your ideas, the precipitate. And then you take those ideas, file them in your system, your Zettelkasten, and you can reference those papers and where you got the ideas from, and you'll have that network created. But where the power comes in is that now you can just write about your ideas and see where all the research was connected to. So I can just follow my train of ideas, talk about what I think and how I've generated this paper, and then my sources are just whatever was connected to those notes by their original source literature note. And with that, you could also get papers that were in a completely opposite perspective of an issue. So you could have conflicting papers seamlessly used in a single consolidated form. So in that way, you're not reinforcing your confirmation bias. You are looking at the whole perspective and using your ideas as that first roadway to really generate that content. I'm probably not getting all this 100% right, but in essence, what I do is sort of in line with that. And then I mix in parts of Andy Matashak's Evergreen notes, which is really just distill an idea down to its simplest component. So it is a note in of itself, and it has one concept, one purpose, and you link heavily to that note from all the other atomic notes. And it's really the terms is the atomic and evergreen notes. An evergreen note is something that you might return to over time, improve it, add new content, new links, update it, and over time refine these notes to just be something that is like an evergreen tree. It's constantly growing, it's mature, it's stable, it's there, and you have this forest that pops up over time of all these evergreen notes that is your collected knowledge. So needless to say, I'm a little bit, obsessed with this whole realm of PKM, Zettelkasten, atomic notes, evergreen notes. I'm obsessed with all this stuff right now. So I have been deep diving into Obsidian, into all of this sphere of things. So enough waxing poetic about it. Let's actually look at, okay, what do you do? How do you do this? This is cool, but what are you actually doing in Obsidian? Well, let's dive right into that. So because we have digital tools now, we no longer have to rely on analog index cards. Some of the greatest features that I use in Obsidian are searching and mass editing, for instance. So if I could just open up a search window and I could type, let's just say Anki, and I have a bunch of stuff in my, templates, I guess. So let's actually do spaced repetition, and I can see everything that pops up for spaced, and it uses fuzzy searching, so I can actually find other things that might be close but not related. In this case, it's easier to jump into an avenue of thought because it's easy to fuzzy search something and then, oh no, I want to look at that actually, and find out something that you want to search for. Now, another great thing is we can take a more programmatic approach. So let's say I want to refactor a bunch of these notes and change a tag or do something. I can just easily run like Bash or Python scripts and whatever and mass edit files in a single go because it's all digital. And because it's all digital, I can also cloud host this, and they're plain text files in Obsidian. It's just Markdown files. So I have portability. I can put it on the cloud. I can access it anywhere. And this is something that Niklas Luhmann's 90,000 index cards couldn't do because they're not portable. You got a giant desk drawer or some big case system to hold those cards, whereas this, it's just some memory on a computer. So besides being able to edit, easy search, and mass editing and cloud hosting of your notes, what are some benefits and drawbacks of being digital versus analog with this? Well, if you're analog, you can lay all these cards out on a desk. One thing I like to do is with Andy Matuszak also has a specific website layout that allows for an interesting way of navigating notes. But one thing I like to do is say, you're looking at some notes and you want to, imitate Andy Matuszak's mode of note taking. What we can do, let me find a good note here. Actually, which one? Let's just do how to take smart notes. You can see I have all these links in here for different notes that I've made from this text. Now, if I hold, in my case, it's it's Command. I can hold Command and click, and I can open up a couple of these notes. There we go. All right. Well, what's going on here? Well, with Andy Matuszak mode, basically we just call it Andy mode in Obsidian, I can now lay out my cards on my quote-unquote desk. I can now see all these things side by side, and I can change them, I can open them, I can close them, and I can easily have them all spread out on my desk for review. This is something that I personally felt was essential, because one of the benefits of analog is that you can lay all this stuff out on your desk and see how it's all connected. Well, with this, you could also follow those trains of thought, open each connected interlinked link, and have it all open like this on your quote-unquote desk. You could also follow the local graph view and do the exact same thing. Find a note and then, Command, click, and now I've opened up another note. Same thing. Having all this stuff open on your quote-unquote desk is a great way of performing these reviews. One potential drawback or a hiccup would be if you decide to use your digital system, because we have these digital tools available to us. If you decided to not follow the approach to Zettelkasten that many people do, you might be tempted to copy and paste notes from one source to your Obsidian Zettelkasten. This is not the best approach. One of the benefits of doing analog is that you had to actually painstakingly write these notes, which means that you probably were, as most humans, lazy, and so you only want to write what you actually cared about retaining. It's expensive to transcribe your thoughts onto cards. It's cheap to copy and paste text on the internet. So the benefit of analog in that instance is that you basically are forced to only write down what you actually care to remember, and you can't copy paste. So you need to be aware of that when you're using a system that is digital like this. You don't want to just copy and paste literature notes or paraphrase or deal with plagiarism. You want to distill your own unique notes and then thoughts. So for my thought generation process, reading literature, forming thoughts and ideas, linking it to my existing knowledge base, what is my workflow? Well, let me tell you, I constantly change everything I do to be as optimized as much as possible for me, particularly because I have ADHD and just the way that I like to think and operate and work. I constantly am changing my workflow to better help me actually get work done. Like, it's not just, oh, this is cool, bells and whistles, all that stuff. Like, and it's what actually helps me get work done. That's because it's the point. It's not just, I want to constantly be fiddling with this system and that's fun, but that's not actually productive. It doesn't actually do anything. We need to actually reinforce the workflow of incoming content, idea distillation, produced output. And that output could be video, writing, whatever. So what I've done is, because Mermaid.js is supported in Obsidian, I actually make flowcharts for my workflows. And it's kind of big here. So this is my content influx workflow, meaning I will process content in this specific way. So if I have incoming media, I have a variety of tools that I rely on. If I have, let's just start from the right. So if I have a physical book, How to Take Smart Notes by Zonka Aden, I'm reading this book, which I did, up in the mountains. I'm going to read and take notes. Cool. If I have my computer with me, I might take digital notes, but I might take physical notes. That's fine too. That's what I actually had to do up at my cabin when I read that book. And I took 7 pages of notes. It was kind of a pain to transcribe all of it. So what I might do is, if that book is super long and really, really technical content, really hard to, digest, I might just work on one chapter at a time. What I mean by that is I might read a chapter, take my notes, read those notes, and then form my ideas and make those idea seedlings. And I'm going to use gardening and forest and plant analogies because this is what I like to do. So from those literature notes, I will distill my ideas into seedlings. Those seedlings are currently in the seed box. So they're like, okay, we got some ideas, brand new. What do we do with them? So the seedlings move from the seed box and go into the incubator because we're trying to grow them. We're trying to, mature them. And we do that by actually putting your idea onto quote unquote paper. So you'd write out your note, and then what do you do from that? Well, after the incubator, we want to plant that little seedling into the evergreen forest. How do we do that? Well, we link it with our existing knowledge. I might link it to the original source material, which is, okay, this is an idea, cool. Where did I get this idea from? What inspired this idea? And I want to remember that stuff. So I actually connect it to its source literature note, and then I will connect it to the actual knowledge I already have. How does this fit in to the other knowledge? And what I've gotten from some of this material and books and movies I've read and watched on Zettelkasten is it's not where do I want to find this, it's where do I want to stumble upon this? Because this isn't dealing with folders and hierarchies of structured layouts of everything. It's all a top level just pool of cards, basically, pool of notes. And they're all linked together. So it's not where do I want to find this because it's just a pile of files. It's in a single directory, top level. It's where do I want to find this or where do I want to stumble upon this? What ideas connect to this by reviewing the notes I already have? And where can I find this, where it might fit in and connect? And then I can stumble upon that note in the future because I'm reading this thing and, oh wait, that's connected to this. Follow that avenue of thought. And by heavily linking these files to other related material, you build this network and web of information and knowledge that will then aid you as you write because it's an external framework for thought. It guides your thought process, shows you what you've already thought about in your own words, not copy pasta, not moving stuff around and paraphrasing literature. It's your own unique thoughts on something connected to all your other thoughts, a second brain. And by following that, you're able to more easily stay in the flow state, get your writing done, and see how different things are connected and generate unique and insightful content through serendipitous discovery of linkages of ideas. That's a lot of talking, but what does this actually look like in practice? So I have the workflow here for the book. And so I'm just going to use how to take smart notes as my example. I showed earlier a little bit of the literature notes I took on it. So how to take smart notes, and I love that search. So I have some metadata about the source note. So I'm tagging some people, the name of the note, and then some tags. When I reviewed it, when was this published? A little bit of the BibTeX entry. I'm gonna describe a little bit about that in a bit. But what I actually want to show is this is my literature notes in this case. Like I didn't copy and paste this. I just started taking some notes by hand when I was reading this material, and I made some bullet points. And then I review this later. So I'm reviewing the book, I write these notes, and then I say, as I'm going through my second pass after I finish the book, because this wasn't a super long and complex material, so I just reviewed the whole book. Now I have my literature notes. Now I do my second pass. If it's a big, complex book, might do that chapter by chapter. It depends on how taxing the iteration cycle is. So I can say, oh, okay, well-defined tasks negate the need for the use of the limited supply of willpower. Cool. That is a good bullet point. That's an idea. Okay, let's elaborate on that. And then I turned that whole piece of text into a link. And the whole point of this is that this is a curated system. I can change the names of these links over time, and maybe I might chop this down, I might simplify it into a more atomic idea, but that's the point, is that these things mature over time. It doesn't have to be perfect right off the bat. So if I go here, I can then see, I referenced some other things. I referenced some stuff about ADHD and executive function related to the limited supply of willpower and how that might relate to willpower, and a little bit more about how to take smart notes. Cool. So basically I flesh out this whole idea note from that one string of text, which is now the title of this whole note page, and I generate this idea. I find things that I can maybe connect to this, and then I connect them. And so then I would once this is connected, it's gone through its incubation stage, it's now an evergreen note, maybe a young one, but it can mature over time. And so I make it an evergreen note, and then I file it under evergreen note. And I'll get to my filing and naming and tagging system in a little bit, but this is books. This is how I would process a book. All right, so let's look at the next item. So from books, we have videos. So on YouTube, I like to watch a lot of YouTube videos. I have a specific add-in called, I think it's Ynote, 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 I don't know. But in any case, I use this Chrome extension to take notes on videos with timestamps, and it uses Google Drive, my connection to Google Drive, to get Markdown out of it. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I might be watching a video, and let's watch a little bit of this. This is Brody Robertson. So if we were going to watch a little bit of this video, and this is about the Unix philosophy. So let's just say I want to take some notes on this content here. Well, with Ynote or Ynote, I don't know how to pronounce this thing. I can just start typing. So right now, okay, new note 248. Yep, that's the timestamp. I can say Brody is talking about the Unix philosophy. Great. I can save that note. Awesome. Let's go a little bit farther. New timestamp is added. The content continues. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to watch this later, but cool. I got some notes here, and just so we have enough, just get some stuff in here. Cool. So what I really like about this is that, one, well, it's free. There are some other options I would have preferred, like I think Rocket Note, but it costs a little bit of money. It's not a lot. It's like $15 across a year or something, but it's not expensive. It's just I didn't want to pay for something as simple as timestamped notes when this works. Maybe I might spring for that for the ease of use. But with this, I can easily just, here are some notes. Now I want to manage my notes. And then, okay, cool. But you can also export to OneNote, send to Google Docs, send to Evernote. We're going to send to Google Docs because this is what I want to get. So when I go to Google Docs, now I have this whole page of notes here. I got a folder for screenshots, but I don't care about the screenshots. I just want the notes. So when I open up that document, I have timestamps and the actual content. This is really useful. So what I might do here is for this specific type of note-taking on a YouTube video, for instance, I would probably, find and replace and remove the word screenshot everywhere on here. And I could easily just pop this into Obsidian and then do like multiple cursors and pop all these things up next to their timestamps. Or I could just do some Vim macros, whatever. The whole point is that now I have this content in plain text like this, and it does the timestamps for me, which is really what I care about. Is if I have a note here and I want a little bit more context on it when I'm fleshing out that idea, I might want to watch that video again, and so I might do that. And so if I'm watching that video, I don't want to watch the whole thing. I just want to watch, okay, where did I get this note from? That timestamp. And so that might be why I want to keep these like different times. So what would a YouTube page look like in my note system? So for my actual like literature notes, what I might do, let's actually open up a new note. So if I have a brand new note here, I might input my YouTube template. I have a bunch of templates. So I'm going to do YouTube template. So what I get with iframes, and I use iframes extensively, is that if I have internet connection, I can actually render a YouTube video in Obsidian if I wanted to. So with that video that I was watching, I can just grab this little piece of the URL, go to the iframe, embed that, and then preview it, and now I have the video in here. And so if I had my timestamps, let's just grab those. I'm not going to bother formatting on live. But if I have my timestamps in here, now I can see, okay, at that point, we were talking about this one thing. He's talking about the Unix philosophy at 248. Okay, 248-ish, that's fine. And now I can actually watch that and review and flesh out my ideas. I also have some metadata in here, and that's great. And I can start getting some work done on this. And that's how I take notes on YouTube videos. So one thing people really like to get information and content from is podcasts. So if I'm listening to podcasts on the go, or if I'm not on the go, how do I take notes on podcasts effectively and efficiently? This is actually something that was a relatively recent change in my workflows because I found a really great app to help with this because I'm on, a Mac and iPhone, so I have this ability to use iOS apps. So let's first look at the simple one. If I'm not on the go, which means I'm sitting at a desk or I can sit there and take notes as I listen, and that's the purpose of what I'm doing. What I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to put the podcast player through an iframe into Obsidian and have 2 copies of the note open so I can listen and take notes at the same time. So that would look like, let's just say, what's a good one? Getting things done. And then I would have another copy of this. So I have 2 copies of the same note open. They're both in preview. But if I take this one and I change it to edit, I can now take notes while this one is previewing and I can play the podcast. It'll load, but it'll be playing and I can take notes on this. Awesome. And so that would be how I might take notes on a podcast if I'm not mobile. But if I'm actually, out and about and I'm in the car, or I probably can't do this in the car because can't have stuff in your ears. But if I'm just anywhere else and I want to quickly and efficiently grab clips and take notes on those things, what I do is I use the app Airr for air quotes. So going down here, I would grab air quotes. So using the app Airr, I can actually double tap my ear pods and grab sound bites, and you can custom set how long this is for. I think it defaults to 45 seconds. It grabs a sound bite, the transcription of the text in that sound bite, and then you can add your own custom caption to that. That's really awesome. Then what you can do is you can then take those captioned air quotes and then export them to Markdown with copies of the transcript. So then you have the timestamp, the link to the timestamp on their site, your own personal thoughts, the caption, and then the transcribed text. Cool. That's a little bit of copy paste, but we're going to take that and we're going to distill our ideas from that. And so because we then have that text in my case, on my phone, what I can then do is, because I have a Mac, I can airdrop that to my MacBook. And then from there, if it's only a single quote, I might do an air quote template page. And so what that would look like is an air quote, which is really just a link to it on their site, and it has a whole player and all the text and all that. That's all that would be. But if I have a lot of air quotes, I'm not going to use the embeds, and I'm just going to paste the text. And let me go get some of that and show you what it looks like. And so what the air quote text might look like is just this. I can just export the entire transcript, my actual thought, and then a link to the actual air quote. I can just airdrop that whole file to my MacBook in a single instant. And so then when rendered, it's just all of this interesting content. And I can just take this and then do with it what I will. Now, the cool thing about the iframes is that now I can also take that, and inside the document I can insert a air quote, and inside the source I can put the link to the air quote, render the page, and then it's actually a link to the player itself with the actual air quote. I took some air quotes from this Tim Ferriss podcast. I can say it's an interesting podcast, it's an interesting podcast, and it actually gives me the transcription there. And I can play it just like the podcast. If I only have one air quote, I might do this. If I have a bunch, then it's just, those are my notes for a podcast, and I'll just embed the podcast player. It really depends, but I'm probably just going to do podcast pages for the most part. But this is how I'm actually taking notes on podcasts effectively. And I really like Airr because it's super easy to use. I can just double tap an ear pod, and it's free. I could just export all of this stuff to Markdown, airdrop it to my machine, and I'm done. I could just put that into my whole system, and I'm good to go. So now, one of the most important sources of literature is, literature. Research papers. There is a lot of workflows around this because there's a lot of people who do lots of work with research papers, especially PhDs, master's students, PhD students, candidates, all those people in higher academia, and anyone who really touches research papers could probably benefit from this system and this workflow if they're going to be making content from that and they don't want to risk, plagiarism or paraphrasing or whatever. So what does my workflow look like for research papers and actually getting good literature notes out of that and into this system? So the way I structure my actual research paper pages, let's just do, for instance, do I have any good ones that are done already? I currently don't, because I'm still trying to change my original notes because I had a bunch of research papers I already read and took notes on. I'm trying to redo them in this fashion to actually get better value out of it. So I currently don't have a finished one to show, but what the workflow looks like now is Zotero, 2 plugins, and Obsidian. So let's take a look. So if I'm in Zotero and I'm reading something, let's see, what's something I can grab here in my inbox? Let's pick, spaced retrieval. Absolute spacing enhances learning regardless of relative spacing. Excellent. So now in Zotero, I could easily just, when I find a paper I like, I can just grab the DOI. I can just input that DOI right here. Zotero will download all this stuff automatically or auto-magically, which it did, which is how I got some of these papers in here. And then I have a copy of that research paper. I can then open it. Cool. I can then read, I can highlight and take notes. So let's do a little bit of that. Let's just say this. I can highlight that, and then I can say, I want to annotate this. Where's that annotate button? Add note, or endnote. So this is an annotated note in a PDF within Zotero. So then you could do that all over the place, click on your notes, see your notes. There's the highlighted text that it's linked to. Absolutely excellent. You can grab all that stuff. Cool. So we got a couple of annotated, highlighted notes and stuff in this file. Excellent. Let's save it. Let's close it because we're done. All right. How do I get that into Obsidian? I don't want this to be complex. It shouldn't be a million steps. It shouldn't be a headache. It should be as easy as possible to go from A to Z. So with 2 specific plugins, and let's see which ones I have. So using, I believe it's Zotfile right here. This will grab out your notes, your annotations from your PDFs into a text file within Zotero in the same, sub-level that the PDF was in. Then I use MD notes to then convert those notes into Markdown, which then I can move, copy, paste into Obsidian. So what does this look like? I can say, hey, PDF that I have notes in, I'm going to right click. And then what I want to do is I want to manage attachments and I want to extract annotations. So then it's going to extract those annotations into this note. And right here, you can see it's in a rich text format, which is what you get in Zotero. And it has even hyperlinks. This is also really cool because now I can just say, if I'm in Zotero again, I can click on that and I can say, hey, open that link. And it will actually open up the PDF exactly to where that note is, which I think is really useful and awesome. But now I want to export this to Markdown. So let's export to Markdown. And it'll ask me where I want to save it. I'm just going to put it in downloads, save it. Cool. So now if I opened up my downloads, so then in my downloads, I have the extracted text. And you can see right here, I have extracted annotations. It says, what date, but really what I care about is the content. And right here, you can see it actually has, that says the page that it was found on, note on, page whatever, and it actually has this relative link to Zotero. Interesting. So let's actually copy this, and let's see what this actually looks like in Obsidian. So now, if I open up a brand new note, and I can say, all right, we're going to do a research paper, and in my content, I can then put all that text. Cool, render. All right, we got some hyperlinks here. Note on page, whatever. If I click these hyperlinks, it opens up exactly to the same place. Incredibly useful if you have Zotero on your system this way, especially because I keep all of my files like this in Zotero on my iCloud. And along with my Obsidian vault, I have all this stuff on iCloud, so I can easily just reference all this stuff from the same location. And it's good to go. And in that way, I can also take my literature notes, just looking at the PDF, don't have to be distracted by anything, just PDF, take notes, extract notes, notes are in Obsidian, generate ideas, continue on from there. And through the use of those two plugins, Zotfile and MD Notes, I'm able to easily get my notes from those PDFs into Obsidian for the rest of my pipeline. Last but not least, and probably most frequent, is all that random stuff on the internet that you want to read that you just can't get around to yet. How do I manage all of that? So I'm on a lot of different mailing lists. I have a lot of RSS feeds I subscribe to. I use an app called RSS Reader just to have all of my RSS feeds available. And then when I find something I want to read, I then also follow this workflow. But if I find something on the internet that I want to read, like a Medium article or something I want to watch or listen to, that's not a podcast or a video, I have different workflows for those things. But like, my watch later list on YouTube, I frequently use that. Podcasts, it's just whatever's in my queue is there. But if I have a bunch of articles, like Medium articles I want to read, I use something called Raindrop.io. This is free, and how I use it is free. So what I have is Raindrop.io. I have a bunch of folders, and it basically has a web clipper. So if I was on Medium, medium.com, and I want to go to an article, I can pick, whatever I want to look at, and I want to save that article to read it for later. So what I can do is I can say, the 10 statistical techniques data scientists need to manage. I obviously need to read this. So what I can do is I can say, I don't have time to read this right now. I'm going to save it for later. I have a Chrome extension here, save to Raindrop.io. Excellent, that's what I want to do. And I have an inbox in Raindrop.io. And from there, I add a tag of 0 or 1. I'm going to add 0. So now it's in Raindrop. I can close that and get along with my life. So now in my inbox in Raindrop.io, I have all of that stuff. So let's look at data scientist. Let's just start with that. And it probably has to sync first. So once we sync it, it'll be in there. But all of my articles and everything that I ever want to read that I can't get around to goes to Raindrop. And I was playing around with the idea of the MyMind app that does the artificial intelligence for your tagging type stuff. And I was looking into that. I wasn't really going to make a good use out of that. So what I ended up doing is going with this one because I can add my tags myself and it doesn't clog up anything. So here's that article. Awesome. I can open this and I can actually read it here. You don't have to pay to read Medium articles if you're reading them through Raindrop.io. Hint, hint. But really, it's everything in my inbox is stuff that I want to read or review for my Obsidian idea generation pipeline. Eventually, all this stuff will get processed. So I have a couple folders here. This is just my inbox stuff. I have some stuff for R and Twitch I want to read. But inbox is where everything goes. Everything goes to my inbox. Now, if it has a 0, it's unread, and I want to read it. If it's 1, like this one, I've read it, and I want to actually just send notes to Obsidian. Now, why do I use 0 and 1 for that? Why don't I just use read and unread? Well, because I add a bunch of other note tags in here, I actually want to make sure that they're always up at the top, so I use numbers. It's basically Boolean, true and false. Is it read? 0 for false, it's not read. Is it read? 1 for true, yes, it's read. And then, if I like what I read, because the whole point of a lot of this system is you don't just want to consume content and then just garbage in, garbage out. You actually want to get your meaningful ideas. So I might read all this stuff, but it doesn't mean I'm actually going to use all of it. So what I might do is I might read this and be like, that wasn't really that helpful. I don't need that. Delete. But if I like it and I take notes, I can add notes to Obsidian. I have the article or the file or the thing, and then I can actually file that into my folders I have here for the type of content that it is, and then add relevant tags. Like for instance, I have a blog post in here for, I think it was space repetition. So I got all kinds of tags on this, space repetition, active recall, memory, memorization, Anki, learning. If I want to search for something with those tags, I now have the tags available. I'm not going to waste my effort on things that I don't care about. So this is when they're done and filed. I've read it, the notes are in Obsidian, I file this and I add its tags so that I can search later. This is my curated pool of like my reference library of like just stuff that I've read, I like, I want to keep, but I'm not going to reference this every day. I have the links in Obsidian, but if I want it, if one day I want it, it's here, it's searchable, and I can find it, and it all goes to one place. That's the critical thing, is that I have all of my information, everything goes to one place. This is my catch-all drop point for all things that I want to process, other than like, YouTube watch later playlist, which is what I use for YouTube videos. But in essence, this is the collection point that I rely on the most to say, all right, I can't read this right now. Send it there. I'll get around to it. And beyond Raindrop.io, it's really just my watch later list in YouTube, and then my inbox folder here for Zotero. I have all this stuff in Zotero, like what I want to read, what is next to read, and what I'm currently reading. And once I'm done with that, I'll move it to red. Now the folders in Zotero don't mean anything. They're all basically at top level, but I will then just move it to this other one and then delete it from this folder, which doesn't really do anything other than just, change it visually for me. And that's really how I organize like my inbox pipelines of content. That's like my whole workflow: articles, research papers, podcasts, videos, books, all of that. And that culminates and comes to a head at I now have literature notes in Obsidian. Notes from podcasts, notes from videos, notes from books or articles or research papers, whatever. The text is in Obsidian. Now that they're in Obsidian, we all have one straight shot for the rest of the workflow. I review the notes that I have taken. I did not copy paste. I took notes on things that occurred or whatever, or what I thought about it. And then I review those notes and I form ideas. Do I get ideas from this? And I think, oh, yes, this is an idea about that. Now I have a new seedling. So I then I generate those seedlings. I then incubate them and flesh out those thoughts. So like, executive function. Okay, here we go. Here's a fleshed out seedling thought. Great. And then I will then plant those seedlings in the evergreen forest, which is really just I link them to a bunch of other stuff that I would stumble upon this idea because it's connected to those things. And that's basically my workflow in Obsidian for this Zettelkasten and Evergreen note-taking system. I love using this process, this system, and this application for this type of work. I have already gotten so many new insights and ideas on how spaced repetition and social interaction, ADHD, and memory are all linked together just by trying to file my notes. And that's one of the things that is really useful about Zettelkasten, is when you're trying to find out places for your notes where you want to stumble upon them, not where you file them. It's an active practice in spaced repetition of the content and ideas you've already made, because you need to review them and read them and say, does this fit here? Let me read. It does. Then link. And so it's an active practice in spaced repetition and active recall. Not active recall, but you're reading these notes over and over again to find out where you're going to place this note and stumble upon it. And by constantly reviewing this material, it's top of mind. You then write and read and develop your outputs, papers, videos, whatever, by the interlinked ideas that you've generated. And I, for one, really enjoy the process. And the most important thing, as always, is to keep in mind is that you should have an output. That you don't just do this for the sake of collection. The whole point is not collection, it's synthesis. You want to read, process, form ideas, and generate output from those ideas. Now, I'm not a PhD. I'm not writing research papers. Maybe one day I hope to, but I also don't have just literature notes and idea notes in this system. I also do have some technical content like programming, my statistics coursework, and it's not like my class notes or anything. It's like terms. Like I have a map of some of the content of stats terms that I have here. So let's do standard deviation. So I might keep like a list of terms for like standard deviation. It's connected to variance, to mean, to range, and I can follow these to find the definitions of these terms, and maybe some documentation or video explaining that. And so what I use this for is, one, so I can better understand statistics, but also if I need to reference a statistical method that was used in a paper and I'm not 100% sure on what that is, because who remembers 100% of everything about statistics, is I can easily link to that test, that concept, that equation in a note and say, hey, see that note about this equation. Okay, here's the note of that equation. I still don't understand it. Okay, it's got links to all of its component parts, and see it broken down in processing. And what I also like to do is, if it's a complex formula, I can actually break it down using LaTeX equations, and then I can also have a chunk of R code on how I might actually implement this in an R code or script. And so I have this type of content in here as well, and it's all densely linked together. And this is just the more technical stuff, less on ideas, but it still actually serves a purpose for me, more on the build a second brain versus personal knowledge management, kind of. It works for me, is the point. The whole point is find what works for you. And this is what I'm doing for some of what I have going on. So how do we curate these notes? How do we care for our evergreen forest and our seedlings? So we could do a variety of different things. One thing I really love is the random note feature. So I can open up a random note and it jumps me to any note, just random. And what I really enjoy about that is that you stumble upon things. First of all, that could be a great way of stumbling into your train of thought of what you might want to write about. Or it's also useful to say, a note. Oh, this doesn't look right. I wanted to change my formatting from this to that. Now I can make that change. And you can hop to different notes at random and make edits, review, just have fun, play around. But you can also use like command line utilities to do regex replacements. So you can do regular expressions to then replace bits of text that you want to change, or use grep and find a bunch of different pieces of text and everything. But honestly, there's so much searching and capability in Obsidian that a lot of what I really need to use the command line for is not much. So I'm going to go and make a video about all things Obsidian, A to Z, a complete walkthrough. But as far as like my workflow, I rely on very few command line utilities for a lot of this, and it's honestly a very robust system and is able to easily take care of itself. So I will do random notes, I'll just review stuff en masse, and you can do like tag searching, context searching, so I have a bunch of saved searches in here, and you can search content tags or whatever. And I know you're saying, okay, but you haven't talked about your tags at all, or why you have weird symbols at the beginning of your file names here. What's up with that? Well, let me tell you. There's a lot of back and forth and debate and talk in the Discord server for Obsidian about how to effectively use links or tags or whatever. So this won't work for everybody. Some people do things differently, and you know what? It's all fine. But what do I specifically do? So what I do is I use links for both actually files, but also for tags. So if I went to like executive function here, I have tags for ADHD, psychology, productivity, mental health. These notes don't exist. ADHD does, but these ones do not exist because I haven't made them yet. And my plan for this is using Nick Milo's framework for using maps of content is over time, as my notes build up, I can see like these larger dots, what things revolve around. These ones are already established, MOC, M-O-C, map of content. And what I might have is something might emerge. Like I could have a large map of content built around, say, let's find something, productivity right here. So let's say productivity gets a lot more linked notes and it grows and it becomes a very central idea or concept in my note system. Well, then I could make it a map of content. It emerges. The whole point is that the structure over time emerges. You don't immediately just define structure like this is where all my productivity notes go, this is where all of my mental health notes go, or whatever. You go and you let the structure emerge based on seeing the connections between your quote-unquote tags, which are really just hard links treated as tags. The notes don't exist, but the connections on the graph still appear. Now, I also have tags, and what I have tags are just these like single emojis, which honestly is kind of for aesthetics and just because it's also easier to select and type, and I just like it better than just plain text in this case. I have a couple things here defined. So I have a red exclamation point, which is really just for like important or critical things. I don't have any at the moment. I have a, let's see here. I have an inbox, which is really my seed box. So the seed box is all of my current literature notes that are sitting at Obsidian. So I've taken notes, I've gotten those notes into Obsidian, and they're ready to have seedlings generated from them. I don't just leave a bunch of stuff in here. Excuse me. I'm trying to actually process as much or as soon as possible because I don't like things sitting in here. But you can see I got a bunch of other stuff popping up. That's because my default templates actually have that emoji on there, so, or that tag on there. So I actually have a saved search for removing all of those items, and now it's only the actual seed box items. So with that, I also have seedlings. So once I generate a seedling, I have a list of those seedlings. And so here's one that I just recently made about I need to flesh out called the social contract of the returned shopping cart. Interesting, right? And then after that seedling is fleshed out, it's got links, and it's an evergreen note. I have a tag with a tree for my evergreen notes. And this is my evergreen note forest. I also have a tag label one. And what this is for those tags that might become emerging maps of content. I tag them with a tag because this is actually meant to be a tag note, not necessarily an evergreen note or a seedling or anything like that. I also have a gear, which is for my utilities or just things that are about my Obsidian system. Like for instance, I have my workflow document. That's a utility, and I also have a map, which is going to be for the mocks, the maps of content. I have a check mark for to-dos or notes that need to be fleshed out. In this case, like some of my stats content, I need to flesh out. Like regression has several items I want to flesh out for regressions, and then that's it. So I basically use tags as statuses, or in this case, a way to avoid using folders for utilities or maps of content, whatever. This helps me easily find stuff using minimal tags and a more visual cue for them. So what's up with your file names? All these weird symbols at the front. So coming from Linux and the command line, looking at those symbols in the beginning of the file names, immediately makes your eye twitch because that's like strings that cause problems for like bash scripts. But where it actually serves its purpose here is that on my index, for instance, you can see I have the definitions for these characters. Let me zoom in for you. Each of these characters is assigned to a type of input. So I have books, I have tweets, podcasts, videos, articles, research papers, people, and each of those symbols at the beginning of those file names helps me easily search for that content. So instead of using a tag for paper and making it get lost in here and diluting how many tags I have, because I don't want that many, I can easily just start with a single special text character. So let's say I want to look at all of my research papers. It starts with an upwards caret, or a caret symbol. I can do open the search bar, I can type a caret, and now these are just my research papers. I don't even have to type anything more than the caret symbol. And the same thing for people. And it only pulls out the records that actually exist, because I might tag other people with an @ symbol. And so I do this for all the different types of my content because that doesn't clog up my tags, but it also makes searching for those things easier. But if I also want to search for like tidy data, the paper still pops up, and it will. But it also makes searching for the actual types of input easier for me when I'm looking at my source literature notes. Kind of similar to Roam Research, the functionality to do a daily note or a journal or something where Roam just drops you into, here's today's note, write. The plugin in Obsidian, you have to actually opt in for it, and you have to select that you want that plugin to be used. But you can make a daily note, and what I use that for is in my daily note, it's basically just my private journal, which I'm not going to show, obviously. But on that journal, I will talk about whatever's top of mind. I'll just ideas and thoughts out of my head. But then I also list off, here's what I read today, here's what I watched today, here's what I listened to today, and have literature notes for. I will then link to those literature notes in their actual pages. So that way I actually have a link, of time to those literature notes. And then on those literature notes, I link to their actual ideas. Like, oh, I generated that idea from how to take smart notes. Well, it's linked on that page. So I can see from idea to source note to when I actually read and processed that source on my daily journal. So that's actually how I use the daily journal. And then I also have a bunch of templates here, which is really just like templates of how I add the metadata and structure to different types of input. I also have like a meta, which is just like a catch-all for the idea notes. I have some lorem ipsum text just for testing stuff. My daily note, which is just some prompts and some reminders to fill out some things. And formatting for like footnotes or folds. For instance, folds aren't in Obsidian by default, so I use just plain HTML for that. Air quotes, doing 2-column splits with div tags, iframes, all different kinds of stuff. And one really cool thing is that there's this really amazing tool that somebody in the Discord server or in the Obsidian community made that basically will let you use your Obsidian Vault and your Markdown notes as a way of defining Anki cards for the Anki spaced repetition software. And I'll make a whole video about that in the future, but basically I have these templates for making Anki cards, even close deletion, image support, audio file support, all that different type of stuff, all available to you in Markdown in Obsidian. So that way you could also, while you're taking literature notes, add these Anki cards to those literature notes so that for the things that you critically want to remember using spaced repetition, you can use these like templates that I've made and actually commit information to your Anki decks for memorization. And I think that's really useful because some things you just don't want to forget, even if you're going to generate ideas from that original content. And when you change the cards in the Markdown file, because it assigns a unique ID, this script is really robust because it will actually update your Anki decks with changes too. So I use that to support some of my like programming stuff or just general ideas and concepts I want to remember. The Anki decks and the integration with this script is awesome. It's not an official plugin, it's just a Python script that you run, but I'll put a link to that in the pinned comment. If I forget about it, just remind me. But that is an amazing tool that really deserves the recognition because it is an awesome tool. So looking over some of the other things that I utilize in Obsidian and what I do with it, I do have some regex searches here. I save them, so you can actually save searches. Like I can just search and then I can actually go to the star and then save my current search. I have ones to search for all instances of people tags. You could just search for a person's name with my tag syntax, but like this, that's for that. Commonly referenced pages. This one is for finding all notes that do not have any outgoing links. So in a way, kind of like orphan notes, but this one doesn't catch the ones that have links to it, but not going out. And this one is to find all of my seed box items, so things I want and I need to review without any of my templates being involved. And then this one actually searches for all email addresses or occurrences of email addresses in my entire vault. Useful, not sure how often I use them, but they're there. This awesome command here though, using egrep and all this actually will run through all of my files and generate a list with a count of all the different links I have. And the output file will look like this, and it will actually show you what is most commonly referenced through your tags. And so what this is really useful for is finding through numbers, a count, which things you might want to put into your map of content for a specific area. And so with this, you're easily able to just grab all of that information with a single command. And I did that with this command that I think I got from the Obsidian forums. Really, really useful. And if you ever want to add drawings to Obsidian, you can actually do it with Excalidraw, which is really cool because you can actually just copy this and paste it as, I think, an iframe or an image. And you can even like make the background transparent. Like, it's super cool because I can just easily, send this and I want to send it to the clipboard with no background. And yeah, I got it. Now I can go to my index and I can paste it. And now here's a square box in my index for whatever reason I wanted that for. But easy to just add some quick drawings to something and add that diagram in there if you didn't want to like write out a bunch of mermaid JS code like my workflow like this. So that's overall my workflow for using this system. As for like my goals and purposes for it, I'm a horrible writer. Admittedly, I am really bad at writing, and I think a lot of that stems from ADHD, being able to focus on writing, being able to hold the ideas long enough in my head, connected together to actually put it down on paper in a consistent manner. Like, I just am not good at writing. Not for like lack of trying, not for lack of skill or being able to write well, like words that make sense. It's just I just have so many issues with it. So some of the ways I'm getting around that is I'm using Zettelkasten and this whole system for using that framework of external thinking to help me write, so I don't have to focus on holding the ideas together as much. I can stay in the flow state, I can write text, and then I'm also looking at using Grammarly and testing it out to see if that will actually help me with writing in a specific way too, and using these tools to hopefully actually be able to put out good writing, either in Medium articles. I hope one day to actually be able to contribute research papers and do things in a field that actually is contributing research. And I'll even use this for my YouTube videos. If I get enough ideas, like if I get to a critical mass, I can start making YouTube videos just by having bullet pointed scripts that just link to a bunch of different note concepts, and I just talk about those notes and what they talk about chronologically in that video. And that's a goal to reach, is eventually when I can reach the point where I'm just generating content with this system and just adding to it over time. So a closing idea about this is a lot of people get tripped up by the graph in Obsidian. Don't think that you need to do anything for the graph. Like, people look at this and say, how can I make my graph look more like X or Y or Z or whatever? Don't focus on the graph. It's not about the graph. It's not about the graph at all. The whole point is that the graph is just a visualization of how your ideas are linked together. Link your ideas. Don't focus on the graph as the end as the end point. It's not the goal. The goal is to actually have output, synthesis. So don't focus on trying to perfect this graph and put all your energy into making it look nice by over-engineering connections. That's not the point. The graph is a useful tool. It looks cool, but it's not there to be your final output. Your final output should actually be something that you produce from your ideas. So I hope you enjoyed this. My workflow changes all the time. I try to live stream some of my Obsidian workflow and just doing work in this, so you can catch that on Twitch or on YouTube. I'll be exclusively streaming on Twitch when I can make affiliate there. If you want to ever chat and hang out and talk about any of this stuff, I have a Discord server. Links to all this stuff is either in the description or the pinned comment below. And I hope you enjoyed this. I really love talking about PKM, Build a Second Brain, Obsidian. I love talking about this stuff. So if you'd like more videos, please let me know what you'd like me to talk about. I have some ideas planned, but if you want me to talk about something specific, please let me know. And as a closing remark, thank you to the Patreon supporters that support this channel. Thank you, Alberto, Devin, Klaus, Brandon. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. It means a lot. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.